What is up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? It's your boy Goblin, and today we're coming in with a banger of a video. A true hoot and a holler, if you will. I hope you guys enjoy this video. Drop a like if you do. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And also, make sure to get ready for the new Slim Grinder drop coming very soon. These are priced at less than half of the previous Grinder's price, and they have all of the same beautiful features. You still get a lifetime warranty. You still get an airtight, watertight grinder, and you still get a beautiful, consistent grind every single time. Just look at these things. I mean, this is gorgeous. Get ready for the drop. More info will be on my Twitter, which will be linked in the description below. Thank you guys for supporting me and supporting the grinder drop as well. Hope you guys enjoy this video, and without further ado, let's dive right into it. So this video took place quite a while ago, actually. This was right before I got put into rehab, so all the way back in 2016. It's kind of crazy to say that now that was 6 years ago, but here we are, and it's been quite a while. But this particular day that we're going to talk about here was one of the last times that I ever saw my grandpa. Those of you guys who have been watching my stories on my channel for a while might remember that I used to have a tradition of going over to my grandpa's house on my dad's side of the family and getting absolutely blasted out of my mind, because typically he was too senile to realize, and everyone else there was kind of in the same boat. Now, this is also one of the last stories that I have talking about my entire dad's side of the family in general, because due to a variety of reasons, but mainly my drug use, I am pretty much completely estranged from my entire dad's side of the family. I have not spoken to a single person with the same last name as mine for almost 6 years now, so it's been quite a while. Now, it's kind of a complicated situation, but to sum it up fairly well as to why I don't speak to that side of my family anymore, essentially, when I got out of rehab, I was presented with a choice. I had to either move in with my mom or my dad, because they had very different views on how I should be living my quote-unquote sober lifestyle. My mom, on one hand, wanted to give me some freedoms and give me the opportunity to actually be sober. My dad, on the other hand, didn't even want me to have access to the internet. And because I chose to primarily live with my mom, my dad was not willing to do split custody whatsoever. So from that point, I essentially lost all contact with my entire dad's side of the family. Kind of more than that to it, but that's the most basic situation explanation I could give without going way into detail and taking up the entirety of this video. But either way, let's talk about this fateful day. So this happened right before I went into rehab way back in 2016. It was fall of 2016 at this point, and you know, I had a typical routine. My parents had split custody of me, so I would kind of go back and forth between houses fairly often. It wasn't a consistent schedule, because usually, instead of being on a consistent schedule, where I was living just depended on which parent was less fed up with my bullshit. And at the time, it happened to be my dad. So, we were going over, or supposed to be going over, to my grandpa's house on this night. This was something that we usually did on weekends, maybe once or twice a month. We'd ride over to my grandpa's house and have a little family gathering, because my grandpa was getting very, very old. It was just kind of a family tradition thing. He insisted that we all get together, and you know, the dude's really old, so we kind of felt bad. You know, we went and did it. We were like, you know what, we're going to grandpa's house again. What are we gonna do? The same thing as every time. Get absolutely fucked out of our minds. At least that was my plan. The rest of the family was not in on that, but I always had to come prepared to Grandpa's house because it was mind-numbingly boring. I mean, they would sit in the living room and watch NASCAR or World War II documentaries for like 8 hours straight. Absolutely brutal scenes. So I always had to come prepared, whether I was bringing some weed or I was bringing some pills or I was bringing something else. I pretty much never went to his house sober after I started using. On this fateful day, I had a very fun stash of goods. You see, a couple days prior to this, I had grabbed some hydros off a buddy of mine, and opiates were never a very big drug of choice for me, but during this era of my life, I would kind of just do whatever I could get my hands on, and at this point, hydros were the thing that I got my hands on, so we were off to Grandpa's house with a nice little bag of hydros. I also brought a little bit of weed with me. Of course, I had to bring the wraps and a little bit of weed, because my cousin and I would go on the classic walks, you know? You're at Thanksgiving Thanksgiving with some family members, you ask if you can go on a walk and you go and spark up a couple joints or whatever you got going. That was exactly my plan for this evening. So I hop in my dad's car, I've got my hydros, I've got my weed, and we ride over to Grandpa's house. We get there maybe 45 minutes later. It was a bit of a mission, but not too bad. I lived more in the suburbs at this point, and my grandpa lived pretty close to O'Hare, for those of you who know Chicago. It's kind of an okay area, but there's certain directions around O'Hare you definitely don't really want to go. He lived in one of the mediocre areas around O'Hare, but either way, we pull up to Grandpa's house at maybe 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, I'd guesstimate. It was early in the afternoon, but not too early, because realistically, my dad didn't really want to be there either, but he would kind of get roped into it, you know. The rest of the family would make him go, and then he'd pull up with me, and now I'm there as well. I had already brought my goodies, so I wasn't concerned. Now, when I walked in, the whole family was already kicking it in the living room. We had my cousin, we had my aunt and my uncle there, we had my grandpa, we had my other uncle, who, those of you guys who have been watching my videos for a while, you might recall me talking about my other uncle. I like to refer to him as my degenerate uncle, because he never his entire life moved out of my grandpa's house. I mean, literally, this dude is pushing, in fact, by now, he might be 70. He still has not moved out of that house. My grandpa is now dead. The guy just inherited the house. He still fucking lives in it, boys. This guy never left. So my degen uncle is there. My grandpa's there. The rest of my family, who, by the way, are very religious. My other aunt and uncle, extremely religious. And my cousin, who went to a Catholic school, but slowly over time, I was corrupting him with weed. We've got the whole ensemble at this point. The whole cast is ready to rumble. So I'm chatting with my cousin a little bit, and obviously I employ the good old strat to get the ball rolling. I'm like, hey, you know, why don't we go play some Pokemon Go? And my family would just always fold for that. Be like, oh, you kids go have fun, play some Pokemon. They don't understand the finesse. They don't understand what we're trying to do. They just blindly believe us. Even though my whole family at this point knew I was a drug addict, they would still just blindly believe the dumbest shit. So to that day, they were still letting me go on my quote-unquote walks, even though everyone there knew that I was a raging drug addict. So me and my Catholic school cousin hop out and go on a walk. Now we start looking around for a spot where I can stop and roll up a blunt for us. We're looking around a little bit, we're browsing around, and we pull up to a classic spot that we've used many times before. There's a school that's fairly close to my grandpa's house with this giant baseball field, and we would go smoke in the dugout. It was perfect. The dugout was pretty big, it had a roof over you, so even if it was raining, you could still chong. I mean, it was absolutely perfect. So I start rolling up a blunt once we get to the dugout, and we're chatting a little bit. I'm asking my cousin how he's been doing. He's like, dude, I've been going kind of hard lately. He's telling me that he's been smoking a lot more, and he's been drinking a little bit too. Now, obviously, I'm ecstatic to hear this. My cousin on my dad's side grew up extremely sheltered. He was raised in a very religious Boy Scout type of family, type of household, and he just never had the opportunity to do these kind of things. So I was almost like the proud, slightly older cousin, where I would be like, there you go, attaboy, get at him, you know, up and at him. So I'm chatting with him, and I'm like, hey, you know, I brought some hydros with me if you're interested. And he's intrigued at this point. He's like, what the fuck are hydros? So I'm explaining to him. And honestly, at this point in my life, I didn't even really know. So I'm kind of just vaguely explaining an opiate. I'm like, yeah, it's an opiate. It'll make you feel really chill, you know, kind of like you're on the cloud. I'm trying my best to describe a hydro, but I don't even know if I can describe a fucking hydro to this day. I mean, they're just kind of weird, man. Like, they want to be an opiate, but they're not really an opiate. They're basically the poor man's oxy. You know, that's really what they are. If you're struggling and you can't afford a nice perk or an oxy, you take a little hydro, okay? That's your bottom of the barrel pill. So I'm explaining this to him, and he's like, yeah, you know, I mean, I guess I'll try some, sure. So I bust him out, and I offer him one. He's like, yo, you know, let me just start with half. Now, at this point, I was amazed that he was even willing to do this. I asked him, I said to him, have you ever even taken any pills before? And he was like, no, not really. I started explaining, I was like, all right, here's kind of what to expect, and here's how long it's going to take to hit you. Now, I'm sitting there, and I'm telling him, I'm like, promise me you'll keep your shit together. He's like, yeah, no problem. I got you. I'll keep my shit together. I'm like, promise it. Because if you get busted, I'm in big fucking trouble, because I know they're all going to know that your dumbass is not responsible. They're going to blame that shit on me. So he's sitting there and he's like, yeah, I can handle it. I'm good. Don't worry about it. So we spark up the blunt, and I'm like, let's just smoke and see how you feel after. Let's get to that first. Because this guy could barely even handle the blunt half the time. I mean, I remember one time I gave this dude a dab. He was on Jupiter, okay? This guy can't fucking hang as far as I'm aware. So I spark up the blunt with him. And we smoke through that first. We're chiefing on the mids that I brought through. We finish the blunt, and we're chilling in the dugout a little longer. He starts asking me a little more about hydros, and I remember we had a kind of deep conversation. He was asking me a lot about the other drugs I did, because he knew that I did drugs, but we'd never really gotten into it like that. He was asking me like, oh, so what other kind of stuff have you done? And at this point in my life, I had smoked crack, I had done coke, I had tried pretty much all of the stuff that I have made videos about today. So I'm explaining it to him, and he's asking me what these drugs are like, especially the psychedelics. He was really interested in it. And he asked me, one of the things he asked me, I still remember it super vividly. He was like, so why do you do all these drugs? And I remember when he asked me that, I just didn't know what the fuck to say. I had this almost like, what the fuck moment? This kind of self-realization where I was like, why do I do this shit? But I forgot about it within like 30 seconds because I just responded to him and told him it was for fun. I was just like, yeah, I do that shit for fun, whatever. What else am I supposed to say? Deep down, I just didn't want to deal with any of my problems. But you know what? It's fun. That's what we're going to tell people. So, either way, finally we're done with the blunt and it's hydro time. Now, he mentioned he only wanted half, and obviously I was more than happy to give that to him. I broke off his half, but while I was breaking it off, I kind of fucked up a little bit. I didn't get a clean break, and I lost a good chunk of the pill. So now after I give him the bigger chunk, because I wanted him to have a good time, I had my little smaller chunk left here. We're both holding him, and he's like, why don't you take yours first, And I was like, yo, listen, I'm probably going to snort this shit, realistically. I mean, I've got less than half of a hydro left here. This isn't even worth popping. By the time it digests, I'm not going to feel this shit. We got to rail it. And he's like, oh, okay. Should I do that too? And I'm like, no, you really shouldn't snort a hydro for your first time. Also, I feel like it's a next level thing, snorting opiates. My poor Catholic school cousin, I'm not going to give him his first line of opiates, all right? That's just not going to be me. So he pops his half. He's like, fine, fuck it. He takes it like a champ, low key. No water necessary. He just pops that shit. I was kind of impressed. Personally, I cannot down any pills without liquid. I don't care if it's the smallest pill on earth. I can't do it. I have tried to do it with Xanax before, and I literally threw up on myself. I mean, absolutely brutal. So he gets his hydro down the hatch, and I save my other half and throw it in my pocket. Now we start walking back to my grandpa's house, and we get back there, maybe I'd say 45 minutes later, 45 minutes to an hour. We were out chilling for a good little bit of time, but obviously they all thought we were playing Pokemon Go, duh, so we're smooth, we're good to go, boys. Nothing suspected whatsoever. Now, once we get back to Grandpa's house, I go to the bathroom immediately to rail my hydro. I bust out my little half-broken hydro, and I throw it on the back of my phone, and I am ready for business. Now, I realize that I made a fatal mistake. I did not have any cash on me whatsoever. I had the hydro, I had it on the back of my phone, and I had my wallet, but I did not have a single dollar on me to snort this hydro. So I'm looking around the bathroom, and I'm trying to figure out what I can use to rail this. And the only thing I could see that could potentially work is a roll of paper towels. Now, I could have used toilet paper. However, toilet paper is too flimsy. You can't really roll a straw out of toilet paper. It's going to collapse on itself the moment you inhale. However, I can try to roll a straw out of paper towel, and that's exactly what I did. I twist up this straw, I crush up the hydro on my phone, and I do my best to get it the least chunky as possible. Now, honestly, snorting pills is always a terrible experience, but hydros were always one of my least favorites to snort because they just coat your fucking nose so badly. I think the only pill that is worse to snort, in my opinion, is probably Xanax, because that shit is just unbearable. I mean, the way it cakes your nose is awful, but hydros kind of have a similar effect where they almost cake your nose at first when you rail them. So I'm crushing this thing up, I'm getting it nice and powdery on the back of my phone, and after that, I twist up my little paper towel straw. Now, one thing I didn't really consider before taking this line was the fact that the paper towel is textured. It has a lot of different ridges in it, right? It's a little pattern on there, like all the paper towels, the name brand shit are. So when I go to take this line, I inhale as hard as I can. It's a fat line. I took this half and just made it all into one line, so it was pretty big. It was a thinner line, but I made it very long. It went pretty much the whole entire width of my phone. So I lean down and I rail my line, and I realized pretty much immediately that I was not getting everything. In fact, I barely even felt anything going into my nose. Now, when I looked down at my phone, there was still a little bit left on there, but it was clear that a lot of it had been sucked up. So me being the innovator I am, I knew that it had to be in the paper towel still. I unwrap my paper towel and I look inside, and lo and behold, there is a bunch of powder all over the paper towel. So what did I do? Well, me being the genius I am, I just fucking ate it. I don't mean I licked it. I mean, I literally ate it. I just put it in my mouth and chewed it. Now, this was an absolutely brutal experience because after maybe 2 bites of this paper towel hydro sandwich, I knew immediately that this was not going to go down easily. So I turned the sink on and I start drinking out of the sink to just try to swallow this wet paper towel like a pill. And it went down, but not without a fight. I kind of choked on it a little bit. But after forcing it down with some more water out of the sink, I was good to go. I left out of the bathroom and, I feel like it was kind of a placebo effect thing. I wasn't really feeling high, but even just from getting that line up my nose a little bit, I felt a nice little hype going, a little buzz. I don't necessarily get that now that I'm older, but when I was younger, I remember snorting a line of anything would just make me feel like I was on top of the world. It felt cool. I don't really know how to explain it. So I come back out of the bathroom and I sit down in the living room for a little bit, and my cousin is over in the corner in one of the recliners. Now, most of my family had gotten up and moved over to the kitchen at this point because they were starting to make dinner. So it was just me and my cousin and my degenerate uncle chilling in the living room. Now, I'm chatting with my cousin a little bit, and my uncle, my degen uncle, luckily is very hard of hearing. It's something that runs on my dad's side of the family. They're all deaf as fuck, so you can kind of talk about anything at the family gathering because typically the TV is so unbearably loud that they will never hear you over it. I shit you not, they would watch NASCAR races at maximum volume, like not 90, not 80, 100 maximum volume because my grandpa was so deaf, even with his hearing aids in. Imagine just, the NASCAR races don't even have good audio. You're just hearing car engines and cars whizzing by on max volume for like 4 hours. Absolutely mind-numbing stuff, but it gave us the opportunity to pretty much say whatever we wanted. So I'm not even whispering, I'm just saying to him, I'm like, yo, how you feeling, bro? And he's like, I don't really feel much yet. I feel pretty okay, but I'm stoned as fuck for sure. So I'm like, maybe we should up the ante and go smoke again later. And he's like, oh, I'm good for now. I want to wait for that hydro to hit me. So I sit and watch my full volume television for maybe 5 or 10 more minutes before I decide that I can't tolerate this and I need more hydros. So I get up and I go to the bathroom, and I'm not snorting the other ones. I brought 3 of these fuckers in total. We'd already gotten one down the hatch, half to my cousin, half to me. So I popped the other 2. I didn't go one at a time. I just popped the other 2. I was like, fuck it. Now, popping 2 more normally would be a pretty normal amount, but you have to remember that I didn't do a lot of opiates, and also these were the 10s. So these weren't the little 5s, or I think they make 7 5s, I think. I don't know. I'm not a big opiate guy. Someone quote me on that. but these were the 10s. So these were the good ones, right? These were the nice ones. I popped these extra 2 down the hatch, and I go back out to the living room, and I'm posted up. Now, at this point, dinner's pretty close to ready. They announce it. They're like, yo, dinner's coming up. So we all go over to the dinner table, and they start serving food. Now, listen, after my grandmother on this side of the family died, the food quality went down exponentially. I mean, we went from eating some pretty good, authentic food. My grandma was very British. She was born in the UK. So, some authentic British food, down to we would genuinely eat canned ham. My grandpa thought canned ham was a really fitting family meal. Absolutely brutal stuff. So on this particular day, they had whipped up some bullshit. I don't really remember what they made, honestly. I didn't eat much of it. That's all I remember. But typically it was either the canned ham, a beef stew, or we would order out. So, take a pick out of one of those 3. Well, we didn't order out. So take a pick out of either the canned ham or beef stew. I don't fucking remember. But either way, we sit at the table, we all gather around, and I can tell just by looking over at my cousin that this shit is hitting him. Now, we are sitting at polar opposite ends of the table. We are across from each other, but I'm kind of next to my grandpa, and he's on the opposite side next to the other head of the table, right? There was 6 or 7 of us chilling at the table, so kind of crowded. But I keep looking over at him, and he just looks blasted out of his mind. You can see it in his eyes. His eyes are so low. He looks cashed. His movements are slow. My aunt handed him his drink to leave on the table, and he spilled it all fucking over himself. This man was lagging right now, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm looking over and I'm like, oh fuck, dude, this guy is completely cashed, dude. Half a hydro and 1 blunt later, this guy's down for the count. I'm the sole survivor right now. So I'm sitting at the table, and, luckily, my family didn't have shit to say to each other at the table, okay? They were not friendly people. We didn't want to conversate, all right? We're just there for the politics. We're just there to say we were there, to be like, look, we did our commitment. We had our family gathering like normal people. So that's what we did. We sat there. We didn't really say much, which was a blessing, dude. If we had a long, drawn-out conversation at this table, it would have been absolutely over with. Now, about halfway through the dinner, my cousin asks if he can go to the bathroom, and they're like, oh, sure. Now, I can tell that he's not doing so hot. He gets up and goes to the bathroom, and he's chilling in there for a while. I kind of forget about it. I'm just focused on getting through dinner so I can go and maybe smoke this second blunt. Now, after a while, my aunt gets up to go check on him because this guy has been gone for a solid 15 or 20 minutes at this point. She gets up and is also gone for maybe another 3 to 4 minutes, and finally she comes back out of the bathroom with him. Now, she's pretty much escorting him at this point. This dude is cashed. He is sweaty, and she's like, oh, I think he's sick or something. And my cousin just looks at me, and I have this smirk on my face, and he's like, oh, yeah, I'm really not feeling good. I'm sorry, guys. I think I have a cold or something. I think I have a stomach bug. He is playing the part. I have to admit, even though he threw up and couldn't hang whatsoever, he was playing his damn part right now, holding it together, giving a good excuse, saying, oh, I just have a stomach bug. And of course, they believe him. So my aunt gets up and goes to take him home. Now, one weird thing about my family that I think I've talked about briefly in older videos, but I'll mention it again, is my aunt and uncle lived quite literally next door to my grandpa. I don't know why they decided to do this, but they are literally neighbors. One house over, same side of the street, same street and everything. And they have lived in those 2 houses for their entire lives. Me personally, I think I would rather kill myself than be next door neighbors with my father, but to each their own, and that's what they chose to do. So by taking him home, I didn't mean she had to get in the car and drive him home. She literally walked his ass over out of the gate and over to their house and then came back over without him. So I bust out my phone and I start texting my cousin. I'm like, yo, what the fuck happened? He's like, dude, I don't want to do that shit ever again, bro. I feel fucked right now. My stomach is fucked up. And I'm like, well, do you feel better after you puked? And he was like, yeah, I feel pretty good after I puked. And I asked him, I was like, well, how does it feel? Do you feel good? And he was like, no, I just feel like I'm too stoned, honestly, which I guess he didn't take very much. He took half of a 10, which equates to about 5, so maybe mixed in with the weed, that was just a little too much for him. But now at this point, the hydros I took are starting to hit me. My dad made a comment to me. He was like, oh, is it too hot in here? And I didn't realize. I was like, no, why? And he's like, oh, you're sweating. I didn't realize that I was sitting at this table sweating fucking bullets right now. Absolutely cashed. For some reason, whenever I'm on the opiates, I just profusely sweat. I cannot stop. And this was an instance of that, where I was just sweating balls, even though I wasn't really warm, you know? I was just kind of sweating. It was kind of a cold sweat in a way. But either way, I'm sweating bullets, so I get up and excuse myself to the bathroom. I look at myself in the mirror and I am disgusted. I mean, I look like I just got done running a 5K. I looked absolutely ransacked. So I'm wiping myself off. I'm trying to clean myself up, get the sweat off of myself. And, you don't really realize how fucked up you are until you stand up. I say that a lot, but it's really true. Because when I stood up, it felt like I was being pulled back to the ground. I had a hard time with my coordination at this point. It almost felt like I had to individually think about each step I was taking and which direction I was going to make it to the bathroom, because I had just completely lost my coordination at this point. But my fucking God, did I feel fantastic. It's really hard to describe the feeling that hydros give you, or really the feeling that any opiates give you, because they're all fairly similar. They have differences, but, the core kind of cloud feeling that opiates give you, they're all very similar, right? But I just had that total bliss, that not a care in the world utopia feeling. I was on cloud 9 at this point, despite myself sweating bullets, despite my cousin getting tapped out, getting cashed out, thrown to the side. I was still in this bitch and I was feeling great. So I clean myself up in the bathroom and I go back to the dining table, and at this point, everyone's done with their dinner. I got up and I excused myself down to the basement, which wasn't a super unusual thing for me to do because my grandpa had a dartboard in the basement that I like to fuck around on a lot. What he also had in the basement was his alcohol fridge, which I was headed directly for like a vulture. I busted open that fridge and I'm looking in there, and I'm telling you guys right now, the alcohol selection was grim. It was not good. The one saving grace is my grandfather loved a good shot of Jack Daniels. So he was loaded the fuck up. I mean, there was like 6 bottles of Jack in this dude's fridge. And luckily, a couple of them were already open. I don't know why he opened more than one, but more power to him. He's senile. So I grab one of the open bottles and I just take a swig out of that bitch. Now, back in the day, I could handle Jack straight, no problem. Nowadays, I would probably vomit immediately if I took a straight swig of Jack out of the bottle. But back then, no problem. I'm off the hydros, I'm off the za, my cousin's incapacitated, and I'm sipping Jack. It's a wonderful family gathering. So I'm taking my swigs, I'm getting ready to rumble. And, the opiates and the alcohol are never a smart thing to mix. They're not a safe thing to mix either. But at this point in my life, I didn't give a shit about smarts or safety, so I'm going ape shit. I'm taking some good swigs out of this bottle just to get myself a little buzz going. And I go back upstairs and sit back down in the living room. Now everyone's kind of cleaning up, and you can tell that this gathering is definitely coming to an end, which was a very good thing because I started getting the spins aggressively. I mean, almost immediately after I sat down. It just felt like nothing around me would really stop moving. I didn't drink that much liquor, but the effect of the opiates definitely amplified the liquor, so I was off my fucking rocker. Luckily, I suggested to my dad that we go home fairly soon, and he was extremely down. He was like, yeah, let's fucking go. And we dipped out nearly immediately, maybe within 5 minutes of me bringing that up. I got back to the car, and it was coast clear. I felt like I just cleared a Splinter Cell mission. I went in, snuck past all the ops, stole Grandpa's Jack, and gave my cousin hydros. What a successful evening, if you ask me. But either way, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Drop a like if you did. Thank you guys for tuning in today. And also, make sure you guys follow me on Twitter to keep up to date with the very, very soon upcoming Grindr drop. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out, gamers.